Hi, everybody. This is Andrea. Thanks for stopping by today. I'm excited to share my Elegant Botanicals journal with you. It's a single signature journal that I had a lot of fun creating. I really love the color green, and I always like to have a variety of textiles and layers and things all over my journals, and this one was one that I could actually spend time playing with because of all of the elements that I put to use. Everybody that gave me inspiration for this and whose digital kits and images and products that I used here, I'm going to put into the description box. So I really had a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that you get some inspiration from this as well. So this journal, it's single signature. It's very gator mouth. I've tied it with these hand-dyed silk ties. And when I secure mine, I like to tie one long tie in 3 bows. So one bow pulls, then the second bow, and then the third. And so it gives it depth when it's sitting on its side or upright. The outer cover the cover itself was made with Craftex, and the outer cover has the stitched on hand-dyed velvet, and the cover, the journal topper cover that was inspired by Sheryl Blair Hood. And I will link again all of them in the description box. But then the inside, I used an Edith Holden book page and took it out intact for both the front and the back because it has those botanical elements in it. And you can see I secure my ties on using chenille flowers. You can wrap them around, you can stitch them in, and either way, you get some security to close your journal. So let's go ahead and get started. You'll see a lot of Tim Holtz and layering, and that's one of the things that I'll be spending some time on tutorials on, is how to utilize all of our textiles and all of our different papers and things and put layering together. So here you can see those Tim Holtz textiles had Tim Holtz elements, they had so many botanicals, I had to use them in this. But here's an example of some of the layering strategies that I like to put together and make sure that I'm using depth in adding all of these things. It gives it a nice sturdy feel, but it does really bring out the richness of all of the textiles that we use. And I like to fold my papers. I like to cut my papers, but I like to tear and fold. And that gives you pockets and different items that will make your journal not so fat at the outside edge. And that's something I struggle with. You can see these images are beautiful, and I throw some tooling under it to try and give it a little bit of pop. Here's just another example of layering. And when we talk about layering, there's different strategies that people will implement. I love these fairies. And I did not ink the edges of these images or these paper. When I printed this kit, I used a gold parchment, and here is an example of the gold color parchment. And so it gave it more of a muted tone. If you were to print this on a white parchment or a tea color, lighter color paper, it would have a more vibrant tone. But you can see the gold parchment running throughout this as part of the theme. This is an Edith Holden book pocket, and the journal cards that are in it, all of your journal cards, when you're adding, you can leave blank pages in your journal, and it's okay to do that. I like to print front and back and then add things to my pages to allow them to be written on. This pocket was a gift with all these tags in it. It was a gift from a friend, Barbara Easter, and it just blended so nicely with the colors of that page that I felt like I needed to add it. But you can see as you're going through making your own journal, there's ways to put a lot of depth in and leave room for journaling. This piece of paper is an example. This actually was a fun one. It came from my book from Halloween. I was one of the sisters in the Hocus Pocus, and I carried the spell book, and this was the paper that came from it, and it's so thick and so rich, and it was the perfect color complement, but it's also giving my journal some variety in the length and width of the pages. When we're working, we have a tendency to work on the outside edges, and you can see in this case that I want to try and draw away from those edges and the bottoms, and so I'm putting my scallop trims and other pockets on the inside edge. It also helps reduce some of the gator mouth effect that I'm famous for. I'm always having a really thick outer edge. And here's an example of layering. And so I don't know that you can actually see there's textiles in there as well as the different layers of paper. And I ink my edges a lot of times because it's giving us a perimeter, a border. It gives us some definition. And so that's one of the pieces of inking that people will add to something. It's trying to give it a pop and give it a defined border. So using different seams stitching will give you also a pop and have the focus be where you want the eye to go. This is an old vintage ledger, and I accidentally flipped 2 pages together here. I love embossed dyed paper, and I purchased this from Etsy, and I've linked her in the description box as well. But these are just Tim Holtz journal cards. And then when you're adding edging, you oftentimes will have it on one side and not the other. And I decided on this one I was going to have so many varied layers in this book that I was going to add 2. And so I have 2 pieces of my different shades and different widths of lace added to my paper, and then I secured the one page with some bling. Here again is that embossed dyed paper. I absolutely love it, and I added some images over it and put it with a pocket. And again, you can see I did this with that muted gold color parchment. And so I love greens and I love sage. And so it kind of created a nice muted sage color for all of this. And it gave me a lot of happiness while I was working with it. I got to see all of the colors. It's amazing how when you're working with a design, it can actually bring a little life to your brain. So you see some of the Tim Holtz editions. Don't be afraid to move around your elements. Don't put your pockets all at the bottom. This is a clip-on, it's a clip-on fold over, and it's giving people journal space. I just did a single binding tie, and I used the seam binding that matched the seam binding on the front cover so that everything kind of went neutral through and through. I had been waiting to use this piece of this napkin. Again, you can see this is a fold over. And I had been waiting to use this piece and decided because of its floral theme, I was going to add it to this. And this is another way to take some of your textiles and actually create something that is an addition to your journal and not just maybe a piece of a tag or a piece of a piece of a cover. So lots of writing space in this journal. And a lot of times we get away from the writing opportunities, and we like to make sure that they have a lot of stuff in it. And so here's an example. I used textiles, and this was a suggestion Barbara Easter gave us at an event and said, take some of these textiles and just put them down the middle of a tag. And so I made a belly band out of the textiles and then created the textiles to go along with that in the opposite, so in a vertical as opposed to horizontal, and it brings some color. Here's using silk and multiple layers, lace layers, paper layers on a tag that there's no limits. Here's an example of one that has more texture to it, and it's silk, and you just get your piece on there and create something that is going to give it definition and make it stand out. Lots of options to add to your pages just to bring a pop of color, to keep it so that it has and continues forward with whatever theme. These are all blank journal cards and add-ons. But this paper, oh my gosh, I loved this paper. It felt like I was looking at a ceiling, a painted ceiling, and it was so pretty. I didn't want to do anything to it, so I just put some journal cards over it. And then here's my fun Halloween book paper again, and you can do so much with this kind of paper. If you get a nice fun book, don't be afraid to repurpose it, and that's what all of this is about, is repurposing and reusing. Here again, putting a pocket in the middle or up higher on your page. I wanted color, and so I added this trim to bring out something. It doesn't go with the traditional greens going throughout, but it had some coordination with the colors on the page. So kind of be brave with your color choices and bring those colors out and move things around so it gives your journal dimension and depth. Throw in random book pages and just different elements that are going to give you a journal that has more eye-catching pieces. I like textiles again, and this kit was actually a Christmas kit, but I found these pieces were able to be added to Botanicals. This was uniquely Ella on Etsy, and her this was her Lady in Red, I believe, or a Christmas journal. But these are pieces that will add, again, more color. Trying to keep your elements moving around your book. And so this is paper torn as an inside pocket as opposed to putting it in the outside, which is where we tend to lay things. And I like to use different eras of documents. So I have current digital kits with, popping layers on it, and then also old checks, and again, the Tim Holtz pieces and things like that. And don't feel like you're stuck with one type of textile. You can see I have put every different, I've got the French lace, I've got a cotton lace, I have the bling trims and things, and that's just a scrapbook page, a scrapbook paper that I've had for a really long time, and dividing up the image on your page so that it gives it depth and allows people to have something more to look at. Lots and lots of writing space and options for people to write on the back of journal cards. And some pages need to not be interrupted. And I felt this was actually going to be a writing page like that one there, but when I flipped it over, and I always print front to back when I'm making my journals, when I flipped it over to put the glue on, I saw that and realized I think that needed to kind of stand alone. And you can see, the images on the flowers and how it just needed to have everything tie together with it. So it's really fun. And then I left the back page unadorned because it just seemed like it needed to stand on its own. So don't feel restricted to coffee dyed, tea dyed paper. Don't feel restricted to one type of lace, one type of textile. Don't feel restricted with what you're going to do with your ties and how you're going to attach things to your journal. Be fun, play with it. Be fun with it, layer, and have a good time. Thank you so much.